Hi everyone, so this is Ellie. I'm back, I'm live, and now more important than taking video of me is actually checking out this picture together. So, this is a picture that was taken in 1946, and I think it's a pretty awesome picture. When I see it, I see all of these ladies in all of these different really fun and interesting hats. There's so many crazy things going on in this image. And they're all sitting around, and I think right now, as we are all in our kind of social distancing, that seeing this many people at a luncheon together has this vaguely anachronistic feeling, and you're like, oh, wow, to be at a luncheon. Although most of us, when we're at those luncheons, are like, I can't believe I'm at another luncheon. This luncheon, as I said, took place in 1946, and it was a luncheon of the Milwaukee Jewish Federation. It's actually before the women's division was a thing. This was just a group of women who convened to raise money on behalf of the Milwaukee Jewish Federation. And you can see they're, I would say, kind of, they look pretty swankified, as they say, or at least they say in Wicked. You know, they all have different hats and different looks, and they're all looking at the camera. One thing that I think is always really interesting to note is the room they're in. For those of you who are Milwaukee historians, this is at the what is then the Schrader Hotel, what is now the Milwaukee Hilton City Center downtown. And those same mirrors and chandeliers are still there. It's a really beautiful setting. If you look to the very top of the picture, you can see what they're raising money for. And it's a really interesting thing as I'm looking at it. It's, you know, there's this picture at the very top of numbers, 5,700,000 did they die in vain. This picture was taken on April 25th, 1946. It's less than a year after World War II. And they still don't have a full number of how many people have died in the Holocaust. They're still trying to get to that number. So they're working through that. You know, what does that mean? What do you do in the light of that? And they're taking stock of who needs to be protected. They're saying at the very top, there are these big posters. The one on the left side says, "We won't fail you." The one in the middle says, "Look into her eyes." And it shows this picture of this truly pathetic girl. I'm going to post these all in the comments so you can enlarge them and zoom in and kind of look at the messaging. And then the final one, and this is 1946, this is 2 years, almost to the day before the Israel's Independence Day. They're saying, "Off to Palestine and freedom." They're saying, "We've seen what happens without a Jewish state, and there needs to be one." This is a community responding to crisis. This is a community coming together to say, what can we do to make things better? What does it mean? And in this case, it means raising money. It means supporting those who can't support themselves. And I think it's such a compelling and interesting case in showing that, because it's not what you first see here. At first, you see this kind of, you know, group of women in their hats, and it looks so low key, not low key, I would say it looks so like gendered and specific to that time. But really, this is a group of women who are coming together in a national cause. This campaign that was run through what was then the Jewish United Fund, which is now Jewish Federations of North America, tasked itself with raising $100 million in 1946. Think of that, $100 million in 1946 would be $1.1 billion today. And this particular ladies' luncheon in Milwaukee raised $25,000. $25,000 at one luncheon in Milwaukee. It's kind of amazing. My big thing in looking at this picture and in thinking about this assignment for myself, thinking about what can I do to bring the museum to life while the museum is closed, this is one of those things that I use with groups all the time. I use this with so many school groups, especially when we're talking about the Holocaust. Not just because this is showing what American Jews were doing after the war. There's always been this big lingering question for me as I look at this image. There are all these ladies, they're having lunch. And I know the history of Milwaukee's Jewish community, and the majority of Milwaukee Jews came to this country between 1880 and 1922. So many of these women have to be first or second generation Americans. And my big question when I look at this picture is, how many of these women have grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins that they haven't heard from, that they don't know what happened to? We are living in a place right now where we are all so disconnected, but at the same time, we are hyper connected. What does it mean? I can post a question about what I had for dinner and I can get 100 responses from 100 people all over the world. These people have to wait and see and figure out, can I hear from my aunt, uncle, cousin? Is there any way to get in touch with them? How are they going to get in touch with me? One of our survivors who spoke in the community for many years, his name was Jack DeGola, would recall the story of after the war, he was in a displaced persons camp and he heard from, he knew he had an aunt in New York and he knew he didn't know her married name. He knew her maiden name was Neumann. Her name was Judith Neumann. Judith Neumann. And he finds an American serviceman who speaks Yiddish. An American serviceman speaks Yiddish and he says, I have an aunt in Brooklyn. Her name is Judith Neumann. Can you find her for me? And strangely and amazingly and miraculously, this guy does. And they form a connection and the lady's able to connect and give him some resources. Jack later ends up coming to the United States on an orphan visa. Not to the United States, sorry, to Canada. And in Canada, a friend of his sees a posting in the Jewish Forward. And in the forward, it says, looking for people with last name DeGola. That's all it says. Jack's last name is DeGola. His friend says, hey, do you know this person? It was his mom. He hadn't seen her for 8 years. They had separated. They had escaped from a ghetto, and then they both ended up running and on the run and separating. And so all this time, he's been by himself, and suddenly, because of this one newspaper, they're able to come back together. And I think that's what I look at when I see this picture is how are these people going to reconnect with their family members? How are they going to learn what happened to the family members who weren't able to survive? How long does that take? How many years is that? And I think that's one of the things we can never take for granted in looking at a picture like this. One of the things I know some of you are home bored, some of you are looking for something to do is I have always wanted to know if we can figure that story out, if we can figure out who those aunts, uncles, cousins, and grandparents are that were related to people in this picture. I know we have some of the ladies identified, and later I'll put up the names, the picture, and some other information. And if any of you are budding genealogists or really want to go into an internet deep dive, feel free to start looking through and see if you can find on Ancestry.com or on Jewish Gen or at Yad Vashem any information that connects these dots for us. It would be such a help, and it would be so interesting for me to be able to say to future people, hey, you see that lady with the fruit on her hat? Well, her aunt or uncle was this person and they were in this place. I really hope that that can happen out of this. Thanks so much for joining me for my museum moment. We'll figure out this technology thing and see if it just needs to be a picture or if I can have pictures and screens. If somebody has insight into that, let me know. And lastly, tomorrow is my third try at this, and we're going to be exploring the story of Harry Waisman and PKU. So join me again tomorrow at 2 o'clock, and thanks very much, and have a great day.